Hello, citizens of Earth, and welcome to the second episode of That Gaming Thing. Today, we're going to be talking about a recommendation that was made on another hardware channel. And the first thing that I want to say is that I am in no way intending to denigrate OzTalksHW as a channel. I subscribe to it myself, listen to their content regularly. I find them to be unbiased, informative, and insightful when it comes to the market itself. It is also not my intention to impugn the HP 6000 Pro desktop series computers that are mentioned in this particular video. They're great, fast, reliable little systems when used for their original purpose, which unfortunately doesn't include gaming. The only reason why SFFs even have a PCI by 16 slot is so that you can plug in a low-profile, low-power video card and push a display to several monitors. And yes, the OzBox runs okay for what it is, but it doesn't run the way it should. However, even though it doesn't, it goes a long way to proving that people who say you have to spend a lot of money for a gaming PC are just wrong. So what I'm going to propose is that there's always going to be a Core i3 or a Core i5 mini tower available on eBay used with a Windows 7 COA, based on a few simple search techniques that I'm going to teach you in this video. And that, combined with a different entry-level video card choice, is going to make all the difference in the world in our ability to play some excellent budget gaming on an ultra-cheap PC. Without further ado, let's listen to OzTalksHW and find out what an OzBox is.
What's up, everyone? So lately I've been getting a lot of messages requesting me to do a gaming PC under 200 bucks. Well, the issue with making a gaming computer that cheap is that you usually have to find very good deals, and said deals are usually not available to everybody, and if they are, they don't last very long. So for the past month, I went on a visionary quest trying to figure out if you can actually build a $200 gaming computer or less that can apply to almost anybody. Now, the result of said visionary quest is what I like to call the OzBox. Now, I do not own any of the components that come with the OzBox, but it was kind of my idea to put it all together, and so I kind of trademarked it with that name. Now, this is an entry-level gaming computer that almost anyone can build. If you're in the US, then you can definitely build this, but it might be a little bit harder if you're outside of that region. Now, the computer is more or less an upgraded pre-built machine. It's an HP Compact 6000 Pro with an upgraded CPU and an installed dedicated graphics card. The good thing about this is that the pre-built is actually only $50 shipped, and it comes with pretty good components. It comes with a Core 2 Duo, 4 gigs of DDR3 memory, a 250 gigabyte hard drive, a keyboard and a mouse, and built-in speakers. On top of that, it also has a Windows 7 COA, so as far as I'm concerned, you can also install the operating system free of charge.
So we've got an HP 6000 Pro with a Pentium, not Core 2 Duo, E6300 at 2.8 gigahertz, 4 gigabytes of RAM, 250 gigabyte hard drive, and a Windows 7 Pro COA. At least I'm 95% sure it's going to be Pro. And this system runs on the Intel Q43 Express chipset. Front side bus is 1066 megahertz, but it's running at 800 because it's a Pentium, not a Core 2 Duo or Core 2 Quad. RAM speed limited by the board is 1066 megahertz, although it's probably a 1333 megahertz module or modules in the board. And the biggest limitation of this system is its PCIe 2x16 half height, which means it requires a low profile card, half power, which means it only provides 35 watts maximum power to the 750 Ti, which I believe is right around 65-70 watts. So let's do a web search for HP 6000 Pro Quick Specs, which should lead to a very detailed PDF description of this system. So here we're looking at the HP Quick Specs for the 6000 Pro series. Let's scroll on down to the small form factor PC. And now is a good time to talk about the fact that this PCIe by 16 slot is half height and half power is going to apply to every small form factor, not just this HP, not just this model, but every Dell, every HP, every Lenovo, every little small form factor PC you look at. It's best just to steer clear of them entirely for gaming. That's why there's so many of them, and they're so cheap. Let's back up and talk about serial number for a second. Just so you know, every HP Quick Spec, that is for every model, has this serial number breakdown. So if you ever have an HP serial number, you can go to any Quick Spec and access this chart. Judging by the clock speed advertised and the model number E6300, the chip that we're looking at is in fact a Pentium, not a Core 2 Duo or a Core 2 Quad. This actually means the system's only going to run an 800 megahertz front side bus speed with a Pentium, as opposed to the 1066 it would run with a Core 2 Duo or Core 2 Quad. So unfortunately, in this case, the system isn't even using the entire capability of the motherboard's front side bus. And now we're just going to take a quick look at the memory configurations that are possible in the 6000 Pro system. Notice it will accept up to a maximum of 16 gigabytes of RAM. That would be 4 4-gigabyte modules. To get 8 gigabytes of RAM total, you'd want to use 4 2-gigabyte modules. And finally, let's just confirm what we think we know about the PCIe slot. All right, so here we go. The small form factor is on the right. There you go, PCIe 2 slot, half height, and only 35 watts of power. 35 watts of power, and I'm pretty sure the 750 Ti takes almost double that. So here we can see that the GTX 750 Ti is expected to use about 64, 65 watts while gaming, and up to 68 watts it looks peak power. So the SFF 6000 Pro is actually underdriving this card by almost half the power it needs to run. And the last two things that we're going to look at are the motherboard for the 6000 Pro small form factor. Over here on the right, you can see a standard CPU power connector, standard ATX CPU power connector. But over here on the left is where the nightmare begins. You have this weird ass little 6-pin main board connector. And then up above it, you have two 4-pin SATA connectors that go to your SATA drives. And then one of those little headers above the SATA ones, I think it's the second one from the right, actually has another little tiny connector that plugs into it. And I'm pretty sure the board actually even has a connector from the board out to the optical drive, I believe, to power it. So there's not even a direct plug from the power supply to the optical drive. It's just, well, it's just crazy. HP actually spent money to snafu the board up this badly. At any rate, so much for the actual board itself. And lastly, the upside down power supply from a 6000 Pro small form factor. The bottom of the fan housing has these little projections on it. They slide into slots in the chassis. And then you plug the power supply in and you slide the power supply back and down into its final functioning position. And then you can put the top back on or the side cover, as it were, on the little SFF case. So the power supply is a very specific shape. It's only 240 watts, and because of the power connectors, there's that weird little one I was talking about that's in addition to all the other crazy little connectors on this power supply. So you can't upgrade it. Even if you could find a power supply that was that shape, it wouldn't have these weird little connectors. So yeah, you're just stuck. You're stuck from a power supply standpoint, you're stuck from a low profile standpoint, and you're stuck from the standpoint that the slot only provides 35 watts. So once again, this is why I'm going to say do not buy a 6000 Pro small form factor or any small form factor PC for gaming purposes. They're just not worth it. No upgrade capability and no ability to use the entire capacity of any decent video card.
So I decided to match the HP Compact Pro with the 750 Ti for 110 bucks. Now, if you combine the pre-built machine for 50 bucks and then this video card for 110, it is 160 for the baseline model of the OzBox.
Okay, so to get started building a much better gaming PC for a tiny bit more money, first need to learn how to search on eBay. Go to Categories, Computers and Tablets, then find Desktops by OS and choose No OS Included. That's No OS Included. Then continue the process by choosing whatever processors you're interested in. I usually pick a few AMDs, A10s or A8s maybe, and then Intel Core 2 Quad, first, second, and third generation i3s and i5s, and maybe up to fourth generation if they're there. At any rate, I apply those processors, and it's a good idea to go for any processor that you're interested in. Can't hurt to add it to the list. And once you've narrowed down your choice of PCs, realize that we're going to come in under budget with this build. So if you want to select Windows 10 also, you might from time to time find a little tower that has Windows 10 on it and a Core i3 or a Core i5. So bonus for you. In any event, when you get your CPU selected, make sure that you select that you sort your results by priced plus shipping, lowest first, and then scroll down and select Buy Now from your auction options, and then just go straight down the list. You can ignore every small form factor computer that there is. One of my favorite brands is Lenovo because all the motherboards are standard ATX. That means you can plug any power supply into them. And they seem to be absolutely neutral when it comes to booting up with a Radeon or an NVIDIA GTX card. They simply don't care. Sometimes with HPs or Dells, you can definitely have issues, but they're actually my favorite brand to look for when it comes time to build a really cheap gaming PC. This particular Lenovo system has a Core i5-750, I believe. It has 4 gigabytes of RAM. It has a 250 gigabyte hard drive. It has a Windows 7 COA, but most importantly, it has a full height, full power PCIe by 16 slot for gaming. It is a Gen 2 slot, by the way. Now, this is newer hardware, therefore you're looking at a newer chipset. This one uses the Intel Q57 Express chipset. So we'll be looking at more advanced technology overall in this little system, and I believe the price is quite affordable. Yes, indeed. Turns out we can get this little guy for $80 plus whatever video card we choose. So let's take a look at those. That's the fun part anyway. All right, and we're going to be looking at 3 video cards. The RX 460 with 2 gigabytes, the GTX 750 Ti with 2 gigabytes, and the GTX 1050, also with 2 gigabytes. So the first one we'll take a look at is the one that was actually used in the OzBox. That's the NVIDIA GTX 750 Ti. This is an MSI model. 750 Ti has 768 cores, 2 gigabytes of DDR5 through 128-bit bus. And for its time, it was not a bad little video card. However, it was released in like 2012 or 2013. It's not really going to be our best choice necessarily for this project. It's also not the least expensive card in the bunch. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at a little RX 460 from Gigabyte. Decent little dual fan card. This is going to be your basic 460 design with 2 gigabytes of DDR5, 896 cores, and of course 128-bit bus. Now, some RX 460s do require an external 6-pin power connector. However, this one does not. This one's going to work just fine with our bone stock Lenovo power supply. And last but not least, we're going to look at some of the latest tech from NVIDIA, and that's going to be the GTX 1050. This little guy has 640 CUDA cores, 2 gigabytes of DDR5 through 128-bit bus. It is the most expensive card of the 3. It is also just maybe slightly faster than an RX 460, possibly more like neck and neck at this point. At any rate, those are our 3 choices, and because we're going for the most bang for our buck, we are going to go ahead and go with the RX 460. It's a dual fan design. It's going to fit just fine in the Lenovo Tower, even though it's about a 7.5 inch card. And it's going to give us excellent performance while still staying way, way under our budget. So let's take a look at the cost of the card and the cost of the system. So looking at the specs for our Lenovo, we ended up with a Core i5-750 at 2.67 gigahertz, 4 gigabytes of RAM, a 250 gigabyte hard drive, and a Windows 7 probably Pro COA. Q57 chipset, no front side bus. This time it's DMI at 2 gigatransfers per second. Max RAM speed of 1333 megahertz and SATA 3 gigabit per second interface. We also have a standard ATX motherboard that you can plug any power supply into, but most importantly a full height, full power PCIe 2 by 16 slot for the video card. So what did our $10 buy us? Well, roughly double the CPU power, a main bus that's more than twice as fast as on the 6000 Pro, and about 33% more graphics power. But the most crucial advantage of a Lenovo system is that you can actually upgrade it. With a bone standard ATX motherboard and therefore the ability to accept a standard ATX power supply, you can get a 500 or 600 watt PSU and throw it into this bad boy and you're ready to drop, say, a GTX 1060 or an RX 470 into it. Either of those cards would be perfect for a system like this. Alright, so first and most importantly, don't panic. If all you want to do is follow my advice, buy a tower, and plug a 2 gigabyte RX 460 into it, then you don't have to worry what brand or model you choose. Just zero in on any mini tower with an i3 or an i5. First generation is okay, second or later generation is better. And again, if you simply want to plug in the RX 460, you are going to be able to find some worthwhile mini tower with a Core i3 or a Core i5 in it, better technology, full height, full power slot, and if you do have a little bit more discerning requirements, that's the only time you actually have to check the motherboard for standard 24-pin ATX power header and standard 4 or 8-pin ATX CPU power header. Now let's get back to the OzBox video for some performance metrics.
So as you can see, both of them are 1080p capable, but the quad-core variant more so than the dual-core variant. I will say with games like GTA 5, the dual-core was very glitchy and very sluggish and had very, very, very slow loading times. So if you do plan to play GTA 5, then at least get yourself a quad-core CPU for this OzBox.
Alright, so now it's time for the comparison between the GTX 750 Ti and the RX 460. For anybody who doesn't believe the RX 460 is a substantially better card for a little bit less money. These prices are not current. Obviously, you can now get a RX 460 for 90 bucks. Oh, by the way, that little Gigabyte model does have a $20 rebate. So if you were to actually take advantage of the rebate, you'd end up with a system that was 10 bucks less than the base model OzBox. All right, so as we travel slowly down this page, you will notice that the RX 460 hammers the GTX 750 Ti in every conceivable metric. Overall, it's 33% faster. It's got substantially faster texture rendering, does better particle effects. The only thing that the 750 Ti does come in close, and I was surprised, was N-body calculation, which is only 7% slower than the RX 460. But I mean, overall, it's just a substantially slower card. Obviously, it's a substantially older card. Now, look at these sales metrics. During the month of March 2017, the 750 Ti was actually gaining ground in sales against the RX 460. So it's $20 more expensive, it's 33% slower, and yet people are still buying the 750 Ti for some unknown reason. Now, here's what I think happened with the OzBox. I think they just got kind of obsessed with the idea of these small form factor machines being so cheap out of the gate that maybe they didn't fully consider the ramifications and how limited they were in video cards, and that's how that all ended up. But at any rate, I can't in good conscience recommend that you put a 750 Ti in something when there's a cheap 460 available. So the recommendation is going to be any decently modern Core i3 or Core i5 system that you can lay your hands on that's in a mini tower for $100 or under, and couple that with a 2GB RX 460 video card. If you don't plan to upgrade to a card that requires an external power connector, you don't need to check the motherboard. All you need to do is find any mini tower, or sometimes they call them micro towers, with an i3 or an i5 in it and a suitable amount of memory. If the system does not come with as much memory as you want, when you buy it from the person, ask them if they can max out the memory for you. A lot of times it's really cheap to have the vendor do that. However, if you are interested in keeping this system around for a few years, then you'll definitely want to check the motherboard for standard ATX power headers. When the time comes, you'll be able to drop in a 500 or 600 watt power supply and upgrade your video experience to like a GTX 1060, RX 470, or even maybe an RX 480. So for now, the recommendation is going to stay the same. With a budget of $100, what you need to do is get ready to compose an eBay search. On that eBay search, you are going to want to find the computers and tablets category, then find desktops by OS and choose no OS installed. Then get your CPUs in order, Core i3s and i5s, second gen or newer, if possible, but don't kick first gen out of bed for eating crackers either. And then set your search to buy now and sort the prices from low with shipping to high. Remember that if all you care about is the ability to plug in a full-size video card, not necessarily one that requires an external power connector, then any brand of any model, mini tower or micro tower as they're called, will serve for your needs. And if you would like to plug in a more powerful video card in the future, remember to check the motherboard on the specific brand and model system for a 24-pin ATX main power connector, and a 4 or 8 pin CPU power connector. So what did we learn from the OzBox? Well, I think the folks at OzTalksHW just got a little bit sidetracked with wanting an inexpensive base system and didn't really calculate the extra cost of the specific card they were going to have to get to put in it, and didn't take into account the fact that the system wasn't designed to game and therefore wouldn't be able to use the hardware that was included. When you consider the OzBox as an overall like base model gaming system, you have the Pentium, which means the front side bus is only running at 800 megahertz instead of 1066, so your board is not running as fast as it could. The memory is slower than it is in the Lenovo system, or really any system based on an i3 and an i5 will be. And of course, the PCIe by 16 slot is the real sticking point for the small form factor system. So the strategy is going to be to spend a little more on the base system by seeking an i3 or an i5 base system, the newer the better, for $100 or less, and pairing it with the $90 Gigabyte RX 460 2GB DDR5 video card. Total cost on that will be $170. After rebate, only $150. If you do the rebate thing, I highly recommend it. I do it myself and get them all the time. So by spending a little bit more on the base system, we get faster CPU, faster main bus. If you have second generation or newer Intel technology, you'll have SATA 6 gigabit per second interfaces for your drives. And the main takeaway would be, don't buy a small form factor computer and try to turn it into a gaming system. They're not designed for it, and it may run okay, but it's not going to run even as well as the same card with the same processor in a micro tower would. If all you care about is the ability to plug in a video card that doesn't require an external connector, then again, any brand or model of micro tower with an i3 or an i5 in it will do the trick for you. And if you like the idea of plugging in a better video card down the road, remember to check the motherboard for ATX 24-pin main power connectors and ATX 4 or 8-pin CPU power connectors. Again, this is in the interest of upgrading to a better video card in the future. And so yeah, if the motherboard's set up for it, you can plug in any power supply that you want. I'd recommend probably a maximum of 600 watts, because really you're not going to be able to drive any card that needs more than that in a system like this anyway. So with $100, no matter what, even if you have to settle for a Core 2 quad in a micro tower, you'll still be better off, and you'll still be better positioned to take advantage of all your hardware and at least deliver the full amount of power to your video card. Now, if you've already bought a small form factor system on this or any recommendation, again, don't panic. If you want, you can try wiping the drive and selling it as a Windows 7 system. If it's a dual core, you may get 40 or 50 bucks out of it. If it's a quad core, you might get 60 or 70 bucks out of it, just for someone who wants a compact little fast system. That's another great thing about computers. You can recycle them. At any rate, i3 or i5 micro tower plus Radeon RX 462 GB equals ultra budget gaming glory. If you stuck with me throughout this video, I want to thank you very much. If you liked it, please leave us a like and consider subscribing. If you didn't, leave us a thumbs down, and either way, we welcome your comments and feedback. Until next time, treat yourselves and each other well. I have been the Madman. Peace out.